All right, guys, so here we go. We got 1.2b, which is graphing lines. I had a warm up on there, but I'm just actually not going to do it with you guys. Just try and get through the video. Um, it's Friday for you. I know I haven't been there a ton, but if you have any questions, just see me in period 2 ASP on Monday, and I'll get everything straightened that you need it. So you guys should be on this page, right? Graphing equations. This is the notes we'll go through. And then it's not too long, and then this is where the homework starts. So where it says sketch the graph of the line, there are 10 problems. I'm going to post a second video if you want it. I'm going to go through the first three questions because it's like one of each kind. So in that case, if you want to look at those, I'll give you the first three answers to the homework problems step by step, and then you can finish the next seven for homework. So that's what we got today. So graphing lines is just going to take our slope lesson from last class and just expand on it a little bit in terms of, actually putting these things on a graph with like a y-intercept and stuff. So when I say y-intercept and x-intercept, right, an x-intercept is where your graph crosses the x-axis. So like right here, you can see I have like an x-intercept at like 2.5. And that's actually where your y value equals 0, right? So an x-intercept is where the y value equals 0, right? It's where it crosses the x-axis. A y-intercept is going to be where it crosses the y-axis. So in this case, our y-intercept would be 5. And also you can see that that's where your x value equals 0, right? So your x value is 0 if it's a y-intercept, and your y value is 0 if it's an x-intercept, right? You might think x-intercept, x equals 0. It's not, it's the opposite, right? So in this case, right, we're going to find our x and y intercepts if this is the equation of our line right there. So again, if I need to find an x-intercept, all I have to know is that if it's an x-intercept, the y value is 0. So if I need to find an x-intercept, I can simply plug in 0 for y. And the math is pretty easy here because 3 times 0 is 0. So I'll just get 5x equals 15, and I can divide by 5, and I'll get x equals 3, right? So that would be my x-intercept. And then if I need to find a y-intercept, right? So my y-intercept, that's where I'm going to plug in 0 for x, right? It's not 0 for y, it's 0 for x. And again, the math is pretty easy here. And so I have the same equation. 5 times 0 is 0, so I just get negative 3y equals 15. And I can divide by negative 3, and I'll get y equals negative 5. So that would be my y-intercept, right? So again, x-intercept, plug in 0 for y. A y-intercept, plug in 0 for x. And technically, if you just have two coordinate points, you have everything you need to graph it. You just got to connect the 2 points and you'll be done, right? So it's not a bad way to, not a bad necessarily teach it that way today, but it's a good strategy. All right, so standard form, right? So standard form of a line, that's kind of like the last one I just gave to you. So that's when standard form is technically, I think it's somewhere on your sheet, but the technical form is like ax plus by equals c, right? So the x and the y coordinates are on the same side, and it's just going to be equal to some number as c, right? And then a and b are what we call coefficients. So in this case, if it's 2x plus y equals 4, again, if you need to find an x-intercept, you set the y value equal to 0, and you would solve. So you'd say 2x plus 0 equals 4, and you would just get 2x equals 4, you divide by 2, you divide by 2, and you get x equals 2, right? And you can graph it that way. You get x equals 2, that's like 1 point right there, right? So my x-intercept is 2 comma 0. And then if you need to find the y-intercept, I'm going to plug in 0 for x. So I'm going to get 2 times 0 plus y equals 4. 2 times 0 is just 0. So I'm just going to get y equals 4. And that means my y-intercept is 0, 4. And I could graph that. And then basically all I need to graph a line is 2 points. So if you got your 2 points, then you are good. You just connect the 2 points, and then there's your line. That's not necessarily the way I'm going to teach it. I think that, if that way works for you, then do it. All you need is those 2 points, and those 2 points are like really important points. But what I'm going to do mostly with you guys, and it's different than what I did last year, is really just work with slope intercept form. right? And you can change everything into slope-intercept form. So like with that last example, right? Remember I have 2x plus y equals 4. If all I do is move my 2x over to the other side, so if I subtract 2x from both sides, right, I will then get y by itself. I'll get y equals, right, these are unlike terms, you can't combine them. So I like to put the x first, and I'll just say negative 2x plus 4. And now all of a sudden I have a line that is in what we call slope-intercept form. And hopefully you guys remember that from last year. And all slope-intercept form means is y equals mx plus b, where the m stands for the slope and the b stands for the y-intercept, right? And that's really all you need to graph, because if you have a slope and a y-intercept, you can create 2 points and then like you're done, right? So in this example here, right, I'm going to use the first example with this one. The slope is equal to negative 2 and the y-intercept is equal to 4. So again, if all you wanted to do was convert that first one into slope-intercept form, you say, all right, well, my y-intercept is there at 0, 4, right? Because I got that from my b. And then if my slope is negative 2, I just go down 2, right 1, and then I would just connect those 2 points, and you could see it would fall on that exact same line, right? So I think that's a little easier. It's probably what you're most comfortable with. So if you have something that's not in slope-intercept form, feel free to just change it into slope-intercept form just by like moving the x's over. You might have to divide something, but you'll get it in a form that you're more comfortable with, and then it's probably easier to graph for you. But if you want to keep it in this form and just plug in 0 for x and 0 for y and plot your 2 intercepts, that works too. You can definitely do it that way. It's up to you guys. Okay, so in this example here, right, I'm actually going to work with this one now. I have y equals negative 1/3 x plus 2. So that's mx plus b. So my m, or my slope, is negative 1/3. And my b, which is my y-intercept, is 2, right? So I like to just say 0, 2. You can just say 2, though. I'm not going to mark off if you just want to say 2. And then to graph it, right, all you got to do is you start with your y-intercept, which is at 0, 2. And then your slope is negative 1/3. So if it's negative 1, right, that means down 1. And then 3 is right 3. So it's the same thing as yesterday, rise over run. So negative down 1, right 3. It's also the same thing as up 1, left 3, if you want to think of it that way, but most people don't, so that's okay. And so that's all I would need to graph it. I would just connect those points, and I would be all set, right? All right, and then the last one on this slide here is point slope form. So again, it's a different form. Technically, point slope form is y minus a y coordinate that you're given equals slope, which is m, and then x minus the x coordinate you're given. And so, that you have a coordinate point in this x1, y1, and then you have the slope, so that's why it's called point slope form, and you can just graph it from there. But again, my philosophy with you guys is just get y by itself, get the y by itself, and then you'll have point slope form. You may have to distribute, and that's it. But just to kind of show it to you real quickly, right, since it's y minus 1 and x plus 3, notice how it's supposed to be x minus the x So x plus 3 is the same thing as x minus negative 3, right? So that just means my point that I have is negative 3 from that part, and then positive 1 from that part, because it's supposed to be minus. So you'd be like, oh, negative 3, 1, that's my point, and then my slope, which is right there, is 2, so I could go up 2 over 1, and you can get your line that way. But again, that's not the way necessarily that I want to teach it. So if that doesn't make sense or you're not comfortable with point slope form, that's absolutely fine. Don't worry about it. My advice to you guys is just to get everything, get y by itself, right? So again, if I have y minus 1 equals 2 times x plus 3, I want it to look like y equals mx plus b. I want it to look like that form we just worked with. So I'm going to need to distribute the 2 over. So I got y minus 1 equals 2x plus 6. And then if I add 1, I'll get y equals 2x plus 7. So it's not really difficult math going on here. But now I have this, and this is the exact same thing as my slope-intercept form, right? So I can see that my y-intercept is 7, All right, it kind of falls off the graph a little bit, but we'll make do. And then my slope is positive 2, so that's even further off the graph. But again, instead of going up 2, right 1, I can go left 1, down 2. And then you can see, all right, that would be my graph, right? So just kind of keep a slope of 2. And you could do that. If your graph goes a little off the paper, guys, I'm not too worried about it. So that'll work. So that's pretty much it. The only difference in the video is just you have an x equals a line or a y equals a line. So if you have y equals -3, right, you can actually think of that as y equals 0x plus 3, right? Because 0 times anything is 0. So it kind of like cancels out the x. So it's, it's basically like a y-intercept of, or sorry, it's -3. So I screwed up. That could be -3. Whoops. 0x minus 3. But whatever. If you see just a y equals line, if you guys can just remember that that's going to be a horizontal line. So that's just going to be a line that goes straight. And that slope is equal to 0, right? There is no slope. It's just straight across. So y equals our horizontal lines. And then x equals, right? Just think, right? So this one, my y values are always 3. If it's an x equals line, my x values are always 2. So I just go at the 2 where the x value is, right there at 2. And I just say, okay, well, if it's x equals, that would have to be a vertical line up and down. And this is what we call an undefined slope, right? You have a vertical line, it's not like a slope of 0. It technically doesn't exist. There is no run, so you can't divide by 0. So it's an undefined slope. All right, so that wraps up this video. Again, I have another one if you want some help with the first 3 homework problems.